After the French and Indian War, Britain tightened control over the colonies. Parliament passed the Quartering Act and next decided to tax the Americans with the Sugar Act. Colonial leaders protested that since they had no representation, Parliament had no right to tax them. In 1765, the Stamp Act was passed. It affected all the colonists, and they were worried about what Britain would do next. The colonies protested no taxation without representation, and the Sons of Liberty was formed to oppose the British. Parliament passed the Townshend Act and gave out writs of assistance, which colonists stated violated their rights to privacy. In 1770, a fight between the colonists and the soldiers occurred in which 5 people were killed. The Sons of Liberty called the shooting the Boston Massacre. In the Boston Tea Party, the Sons of Liberty dressed up as Native Americans and destroyed 342 chests of tea. As a punishment for the Boston Tea Party, Parliament ordered the Intolerable Acts, a set of laws that restricted the colonists' lives. There were advantages and disadvantages on both sides. Advantages of the colonists included their support of the people, their knowledge of the land, and their strong motivation to win the war. Their disadvantages included that they had a small navy, a small population, a bad military organization, short military terms, inexperienced fighters, few supplies, and their little wealth. British advantages included their large population, big navy, organized army, many supplies, manufacturing, and wealth. And their disadvantages included that they had few support from the people, little knowledge of the land, and no motivation to win the war. Lexington and Concord was the first battle of the Revolution on April 19, 1775. The Americans won, which proved that they could fight. The start was known as the shot heard around the world. On May 10, 1775, the Green Mountain Boys, led by Ethan Allen, attacked Fort Ticonderoga and gained artillery. British General William Howe went to Breed's Hill where the militia was. Colonel William Prescott said, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." The British managed to win, but they suffered tremendous losses. This proved that the colonists could hold their own ground. Cannons from Fort Ticonderoga were hauled to Dorchester Heights. There, Washington threatened to bombard Boston. On March 17, 9,000 British soldiers departed Boston. Saratoga was the turning point of the war. Burgoyne's army met General Gates. Meanwhile, Benedict Arnold attacked Freedman's Farm. Continental Army surrounded Burgoyne, and he decided to surrender. As a consequence, Arnold felt he was not rewarded properly for his actions and decided to betray the army. Saratoga also caused Europe to believe in America's victory, and so the French allied with America. In the winter of 1777 to 1778, Washington and his army camped at Valley Forge. They trained and suffered great hardship. Some soldiers deserted, but others stayed for their love of their country and for Washington. The Treaty of Paris ended the American Revolution. It stated that the U.S. was now independent. The Mississippi River, Canada, and Spanish Florida are boundaries. The U.S. can fish off Canada's Atlantic coast. Each side has to repay their debt. British has to return any enslaved persons. The Congress recommended that they return property to the Loyalists. After 8 years of fighting, 25,700 Americans died. 1,400 went missing and 8,200 were wounded. 10,000 British military deaths occurred, and there were $27 million in debt.